What's up, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. We do have some breaking news. There has been an announcement regarding the polling requirements for the November debates. So let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So there has been an announcement made for the polling requirements for the November debates. And as you can imagine, of course, they increased the requirements and we don't really understand how they got to the numbers. But before we get into that, let's check out this article from USA Today. It talks about it. So it says, as in previous debate rounds, the requirements announced Monday include specific donor thresholds and polling numbers, but the new rules have raised those bars. To qualify for the November debate, candidates must receive individual donations from at least 165,000 people, consisting of at least 600 unique donors in at least 20 different states. This is up from the previous requirement of 130,000 donors and at least 400 donors from 20 individual states, which were the marks set for September and October. The article goes on to say the polling threshold has also been bumped up, but includes another category of polls that could be used to qualify. Candidates must stand at 3% or higher in at least 4 approved national or early state polls, or they can reach 5% or higher in 2 early primary state polls. So that's pretty good for Tulsi. The problem is she would probably have a good chance of making it in New Hampshire, but not necessarily in Iowa, although she's doing pretty well there as well. But I think Yang is already qualified by those standards. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he has, because he's gotten at least 3% in at least 4 polls, I think. Obviously, Bernie, Warren, Kamala, Biden have all met those thresholds as well. However, this could be bad news for Amy Klobuchar, who has not hit that threshold, either of them. I don't think she's hit 165,000, nor do I think she's hit the polling threshold. And Beto O'Rourke, I think he hit the 165,000, but I do not believe that he hit the polling threshold either. So the early primary states that they are going to include is Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. There was a poll that Tulsi got 3% in South Carolina, so that was kind of surprising. The article goes on to say, the DNC has listed 15 pollsters. So now, instead of increasing the amount of pollsters, they've lessened the amount of pollsters. Isn't that awesome? The polls must be conducted between September 13th and a week before the date of the November debate, which is yet to be announced. The first and second rounds of debates saw a stage with 20 candidates who had to be split into 2 nights. In September, tightened requirements left only 10 qualifying, and 11 have qualified for October's debate so far. Candidates have until October 1st to qualify for the next round. Oh, to qualify for the next. I'm assuming that they mean to qualify for the next debate, not the next set of debates, or not the November debate. So I'm assuming they mean the October debate. So they have until the 1st for that. They do bring up Tulsi Gabbard in this article, surprisingly enough. And they talk about her tweet where she says, lack of transparency in the DNC's debate requirements means lack of trust in the process, in a sense of trying to take power away from voters. It's more important than ever that we carry out our message forward until we finally have a government of, by, and for the people. 100% agree with her, of course. But the article does go on to say, businessman and 2020 candidate Andrew Yang said on Monday that the DNC raised the bar this time in a fair and transparent manner. But I'm sure he's only saying that because he made it. But that's a whole different thing we got to talk about, by the way. That's a problem for me. So, once again, we're at this crossroad where do I agree that there should be some type of requirement? Yes. Do I agree the bar should be raised? Once again, arbitrarily, these numbers, we don't know how they came up with these numbers. Once again, the pollsters came out and said these numbers, as far as the polls are concerned, should not be determining who makes the debate stage. The pollsters said this. They're too wishy-washy. People have first, second, and third choices, but they're kind of being forced into a situation where they have to say, well, I guess this person is the one that I'm leaning towards right now, but I can change my mind. And they don't care. Like, they haven't cared. So, like, that's the part I don't like about it. And also, if you're going to have a set and sort of debate requirements, then why not announce all of them from the beginning? Like, hey, for this round of debates, we have this set of requirements based historically off of where people need to be at as far to be relevant in the primary. This is what our requirement should be. But that's not the case. They have changed it. Once again, you can call it what you want to, but it's last minute. It's last minute, if we're being honest. So the unique individual donor requirement, I'm not all that upset about, because I do believe there is something to be said about grassroots donations. That's why I said, if Cory Booker, for whatever reason, can't afford to stay in the race, then that's his problem. Because I saw Bernie do much more with much less in 2015, with less name recognition, and without being propped up by the mainstream media. I've seen Tulsi, this election cycle, do much more with even less than Bernie had in 2015. And she seems to be doing just fine as far as keeping her campaign afloat. The whole point of the unique donation requirement is, my assumption would be, that it's because it is a good measurement of grassroots support, on the ground support. People who are going to be on your side, whether or not you have big donors. And usually you can tell that's a pretty damn good measurement for how many people are going to volunteer for you, things like that. So Tulsi has already met the 165,000 unique individual donor requirement. I don't think Marianne Williamson has made it yet. However, if you have not, go contribute to Marianne Williamson, because her voice, in my opinion, is extremely valuable, and she can definitely throw a wrench in the establishment on the debate stage. She has already. So even though it's going to be extremely difficult for her to get that 3% requirement. But once again, we have to go back to the polling issue. Yang said, here's my problem with Yang. He's so naive sometimes. Like, he's politically naive. And if things are going his way, then he's okay with the establishment. If things are not going his way, then he wants to call them out. That is why Bernie was so hesitant to call people out in 2015, 2016. Because he didn't want to seem like he was doing what Yang appears to be doing. Like, being a sore loser if you're losing, and being, and things aren't going your way. And then at the moment that you make the debate stage, you're like, oh, everything was fair. It's cool, whatever. There's nothing transparent. How did they select the polls? Why did they? Once again, they changed the amount of polls. So why did they go from 16 to 15? What was the deciding factor on that? Why wasn't the amount of pollsters increased? If you say, there's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of very, now I don't want to say reliable. If they're talking about almost anything but politics, they're extremely reliable. Or even political opinions, they're reliable. But when it comes to candidates, it's way too early. But either way, there are dozens of polls out there. Why did you choose these 15? We don't know. It's not transparent. And by the way, even if Tulsi made the debate stage, this would still be problematic because there are other candidates like Marianne Williamson, for example, who are not going to make the debate stage, and they may make the grassroots donations requirement, but they don't have the requirement. Should be something that you can game plan for to a degree. I've seen Tulsi, I've seen Marianne Williamson, and even Yang try their hardest. Like, look, let's try to do things that we can control. Let's go to New Hampshire and Iowa, and then California, to try and get into some of these early primary polls, because really, otherwise you're just kind of you're looking for a needle in a haystack, trying to get into a national poll. So that's what you try. But how can you game plan for asking people over 50 only calling landlines in a 5.7% margin of error? You can't game plan for that, and therefore it shouldn't be a requirement. Donations is something concrete. It's quantitative. We don't have to guess how many donors there are. We don't have to think of the methodology of how you got your donors. It's you have them. You clearly have grassroots support. Even if it's only $1, that means somebody is interested in hearing your message. But with this polling stuff, like, once again, it doesn't matter if it's Bernie or Tulsi. Why weren't these requirements put in place last year or last election? Oh, because they have a lot of people. Okay, the Republicans had a lot more. People forget the circus that the GOP put on last election. But even though it was a circus, they were inclusive. Crazy to say. That's one thing you can't say the Republicans have, or the Democrats have over the Republicans. It's actually not that much you can say. Maybe they're not as overtly racist sometimes, and that's very sometimes, because when it came to Ilhan Omar, we saw what happened. But outside of that, the Republicans run a fairer race, at least at the federal level. They gave all the candidates a chance to make fools of themselves. Donald Trump made the biggest fool of himself, and therefore he was the victor. But you can't say they didn't give Ted Cruz ample opportunity, Jeb Bush ample opportunity, because in the very beginning of the race, Jeb Bush was smoking everybody for the first month, maybe. That didn't last very long. At one point, it looked like Carly Fiorina and Ted Cruz were going to come up from behind and be competitive with Donald Trump. Didn't happen, but Carly Fiorina, a lesser known voice, had the opportunity to be competitive with Trump at one point because they were being inclusive. Am I right or am I wrong? So why is it that the Democrats can't be as inclusive as possible? Why can't we have the highest level of democracy that is available to us and apply that to this race? If we have to have two separate nights, then we just have to have two separate nights, as long as we get everybody's voice. Right? Do y'all not feel the same way? I love the fact that Tulsi's already made the grassroots requirement. That's not the point, though. I love the fact that Bernie's already hit it. He's been hit it. 1 million individual donations. That's not the point, though. Congratulations to Yang for already hitting it. Not the point, though. If they can use arbitrary means to bar people from debating this election, what are they going to do the next election, where somebody who is more dangerous to the establishment than Bernie or Tulsi shows up? Look at what they're doing this election by keeping Marianne Williamson out of the debate. Her voice, she's getting better and better and better at kind of honing her message and managing her tonality and things like that. And she's winning a lot of people over. Her donations are stacking up, but polling is, once again, it's a different thing entirely. And if they can use polling to keep people out this election, and if they figure out that it works, guess what they're going to do the next election? Unless nobody runs against their chosen candidate. Hopefully someone will. Hopefully we won't have to worry about that because either Tulsi or Bernie would be in charge, but that's irrelevant. If we don't call out rigging in October or September or November, there will be nothing we can do in July. Because what I'm sharing with you today will be, people will say, hold up, that happened? I don't remember that. I know it's crazy to think about, but a lot of people will forget unless it's covered wall to wall on YouTube or, talked about widely on Twitter. People will forget that we had this conversation today. And they'll be like, hold up, you warned us about the rigging back then? Yeah, I did. But because your candidate wasn't the one having the contest rigged against him at the time, you weren't concerned about it. You were too busy celebrating the fact that other candidates got rigged out of the debates or out of the race. To be quite fair, I mean, I hate to say this, but like Kirsten Gillibrand was kept out of the race. And granted, if you're a senator from New York and you can't get 130,000 unique donors, then that's a problem. But nonetheless, it was August when she had to drop out. The first primary isn't until February. If she had a message, and you never know, Kirsten Gillibrand is definitely a careerist. And maybe she would have thought, okay, this may be an opportunity for me to get behind Bernie this time so I can change my whole, we don't know. But the Democrats killed that opportunity for us to woo over the Kirsten Gillibrands of the world who may or may not have aligned with the progressive just to save her own career. Very similar to how we have seen Cory Booker do, align himself with Bernie, for example, because it was convenient for his career. You get what I'm saying? So it's not just the opportunity for somebody to be the president, but they're killing the negotiation process. They're killing democracy, basically, is the moral of the story. They're killing democracy by acting like this. So once again, before we go, the debate requirement is 165,000 unique donations, at least 600 unique donors from 20 individual states. And you have to get 3% in 4 polls, or you can get 5% in 2 early primary polls. They've reduced the number of polls from 16 to 15. Don't know why. But this poll, you don't have to meet the requirements until the week before the debate in November. We all good there? And I would love for the DNC to address why Tulsi has such a massive discrepancy, by the way. If y'all want to see that graphic again, I think I still got it loaded. Let me see if I can find it. Nah, I don't have it still. Damn it. I was hoping I still had it loaded. But the graphic that I put up yesterday, where it shows Tulsi is the only one who didn't make the debate that has a huge discrepancy between polls where she got 2% or higher that weren't DNC qualifying polls and polls where she gets 2% or higher where it is a DNC qualified poll, excuse me. So, and the only other person who has a discrepancy like that is Yang, but he already made the debates at that point. So you have to wonder, is it because the people who get the least amount of coverage, but also do most of their campaigning on social media? Is that why there's a huge discrepancy? And then once again, is that because of your choice of methodology that is creating that huge discrepancy? And if it is a choice of methodology that's creating that huge discrepancy, why are we, 1, not adjusting our methodology to be more inclusive? And 2, if they're not going to do that, why are we using them as a poll if they're clearly using a flawed methodology? Things to ponder. With that being said, people, thank you so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa and Sukasa. I'm going to be doing a segment on Kashmir pretty soon. It's going to be pretty dope, informative. I hope that you all subscribe if you have not, so that you can catch it when it goes up. It was actually, I was going to do it yesterday, but I just keep learning more information. I'm trying to figure out the best way to present it to everybody because it is a lot. It's a lot coming at you really fast. So I want to make sure that it's digestible for the average listener. You know, those of us who are not like engulfed in political discourse 24/7. So, but make sure you subscribe so you do not miss that segment. It is definitely going to be informative. But as a hint, it's going to be called "Why Americans Should Shut the Fuck Up About the Kashmir Situation." So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for tuning into that live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. And always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. Hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Also, you can help us upgrade the studio and take this show on the road to cover the on-the-ground politics that you love by clicking on that GoFundMe link in the description and donating literally anything. Anything helps. Also, you can follow us on Rockfin, on Twitter, and on Facebook as well. And hey, more than anything else, people, always remember, find your balance.